Somewhere in the shadows, a warrior steps forward, not with a smile, not with a speech, but with a stare cold enough to freeze the air around him. Alex Pereira. Poatan.
No, his nose is already bleeding. Because he's... Oh! That's what I'm talking about. That's it.
A man who needed no words, because his fists spoke louder than any words ever could. He wasn't just a fighter, he was a storm in human form. Each walkout felt like an ancient ritual, each strike like thunder rolling through the octagon.
Power was different, the style was different. It's a weird style. Hands down, weird movement.
They called him Poatan, the Stone Hand, the warrior who walked out with the feathers of his ancestors and the silence of a man who didn't need to speak. When he arrived in the UFC, it felt like a storm had arrived. With only a handful of fights, he carved his name into history, knocking out the great Israel Adesanya and claiming the middleweight throne.
For Pereira, I mean, that was, what a Cinderella story.
It was like straight out of a movie.
It's fucking the game they play.
Then, without hesitation, he moved up to light heavyweight and once again reached the peak, becoming a two-division champion in record time. In less than 3 years, Pereira went from being just another kickboxer to one of the most feared strikers on the planet. But storms don't last forever. Now, as the chants grow quieter and the fire seems dimmer, a new question circles around him like vultures in the desert sky. Is Alex Pereira still hungry, or has the stone hand finally grown heavy? Today, fans whisper a different story. They wonder if the fire that once drove him is flickering out. Is Alex Pereira no longer motivated? And if so, what changed? At first, Pereira was a man on a mission. He didn't come to the UFC just to participate, he came to destroy, to prove that his kickboxing legacy could translate into MMA greatness. Every fight had a purpose. Knocking out Sean Strickland wasn't just a win, it was a statement. Beating Adesanya wasn't just about the belt, it was about ending a rivalry that stretched back to his kickboxing days. His career had a narrative, a storyline that gave every fight an edge of destiny. But once he reached the top, once he conquered both middleweight and light heavyweight, the question arose, what more is there left for him to prove? And this is where motivation becomes complicated. Fighters are not machines, they are human beings with desires, fears, and limits. For Pereira, the hunger that pushed him through years of struggle from poverty in Brazil to the bright lights of Madison Square Garden was built on the dream of becoming a champion. Now that he has done it, not once but twice, the mountain peak doesn't feel as high anymore. To stay motivated, a fighter must find a new why. And for Pereira, it seems that why is missing. Age also plays a role. Pereira is 37, which is not young in the fight game, especially for someone competing at the highest level against younger, fresher challengers. Motivation at this stage often becomes less about glory and more about legacy, money, and health. We've seen champions before who start to lose that ruthless edge once they secure their place in history. Georges St-Pierre, for example, admitted he struggled with motivation after years of dominance. Even Khabib Nurmagomedov walked away undefeated because he no longer felt the fire after achieving everything he wanted. For Pereira, the same signs are starting to show. He fights less frequently, speaks openly about retirement, and sometimes looks like a man who fights because he has to, not because he wants to. Another reason could be the comfort that comes with success. Pereira's life today is very different from the tough streets of Sao Paulo where he grew up. He has money, fame, and respect. He is celebrated in Brazil and admired globally. That hunger of a man trying to escape poverty and prove himself to the world cannot be compared to the hunger of a man who already has it all. Success, ironically, can sometimes kill the very drive that created it. There is also the issue of opponents. When Pereira entered the UFC, the targets were clear: Strickland, Adesanya, Jiří Procházka. Each fight had drama and anticipation. But now, the matchups ahead don't carry the same fire. Jamal Hill, Magomed Ankalaev, or even a heavyweight jumped their big fights, but not the kind of emotionally charged rivalries that once fueled Pereira's rise. Without a rival to push him, Pereira seems less dangerous, less sharp. Motivation thrives on challenges, and right now, Pereira doesn't seem to have one that excites him the way Adesanya once did. All of this impacts his future in the UFC. A motivated Pereira is a nightmare for anyone, a man with granite hands, perfect timing, and a champion's aura. But an unmotivated Pereira? That is dangerous for himself. In MMA, you cannot fight half-heartedly. One slip, one mistake, and the younger, hungrier fighters will take everything from you. We've already seen moments where Pereira looked beatable. Against Adesanya in the rematch, his confidence cost him, and he got knocked out cold. That was a reminder that no matter how skilled or powerful you are, if your mind is not fully locked in, you will pay the price. Looking ahead, Pereira's career stands at a crossroads. On one hand, he has the chance to cement himself as one of the greatest fighters ever. If he keeps winning, if he perhaps even moves up to heavyweight and chases a third division title, he could write a chapter that no one has ever written before. Imagine a man holding belts in 3 UFC divisions. It would be historic, and Pereira is one of the few who could realistically do it. On the other hand, if motivation continues to fade, if he fights without passion, his legacy could suffer. Instead of being remembered as the man who conquered 2 divisions, he could be remembered as the fighter who lost his edge too soon. Fans notice everything. They can see when a fighter is no longer hungry. The walkouts feel less intense, the stare-downs less electric, the fights less urgent. Pereira, once a silent assassin whose very presence sent chills, now sometimes looks like a man going through the motions. And in a sport like MMA, where young contenders are always circling like sharks, that lack of motivation can be fatal. But let's not forget, Pereira is still dangerous. Even an 80% Pereira is enough to knock out most fighters in the world. His striking is world-class, his power legendary, and his composure unmatched. The real question is not about his skills, those are still sharp. The question is whether he can find a new reason to fight, a new source of motivation. Maybe it's legacy, maybe it's money, maybe it's becoming a 3-division champion. Or maybe, it's proving to himself that he can still summon the fire one last time before walking away. The UFC is a brutal business. It doesn't wait for anyone, not even champions. If Pereira doesn't stay motivated, the division will move on without him. New names will rise, old rivals will return, and fans will shift their attention. That is the reality of combat sports. You are only as good as your last fight. So, is Alex Pereira not motivated anymore? The signs suggest his hunger has dimmed. The reasons are clear: age, success, lack of rivals, and the comfort of having already achieved more than most fighters could dream of. But the impact on his future depends entirely on whether he can reignite that fire. Because if he does, if he finds one more mountain to climb, he could still leave the UFC as a legend among legends. If not, his story might end sooner than anyone expected. And now, the question is for you: do you think Pereira still has the motivation to fight at the highest level, or has Poatan already achieved enough to walk away?